When it comes time to turn something in, you will turn in your project folder. So your P drive 2510. Okay, so that's our project folder right there. So for our mini room, we would turn in that whole mini room folder. You will eventually clean it out before you turn it in. So like some stuff I don't need. If you saved 1,000 iterations, I only need the last iteration of your actual cinema file. If you have a bunch of images in there that you use to make your movie, which we will, we can just trash all the other images and just bring the movie in, okay? We'll go over that more, but that's how you're gonna be turning it in. So you'll turn in that folder onto the server, and then you'll also have this form that you fill out, okay? And that's what we're gonna do today is we're gonna fill out the form for the mini room so you know this is what I'm expecting to be turned in on the mini room. The form will have a project name, a due date. Obviously it's not January 24, 2018 yet, or it already was. It'll have objectives, so here's the things that I wanna make sure that we have inside the room. What exactly you're turning in, your project folder, so like I said, you'll turn in everything, and then what kind of output I want. So in some cases it may be a still image, some cases it may be a movie. So right there you'd see we're turning in for this project, we're turning in a movie, and it's gonna be a camera sweeping across the room. So that will be, you know, what you turn in. We'll know the length, so it's 5 seconds. We'll know the resolution size. We'll know your name, obviously, the class name, and then the points possible. So you turn in your project folder, you turn in your sheet. When I go to grade stuff, I open up your cinema file, I open up your movie, I look at both. I'm looking for organization, I'm looking for the objectives that we have up here completed, and then anything that we've done in one, that should follow into the next one without it being necessarily said, right? So if I say organizing in this one, the next one should also be organized, and the next one should also be organized, okay? So you're still graded on organization, even though it may not be something there. And that's not just inside of your cinema file, making sure things are labeled, but also your layers are labeled, your materials are labeled, your folders itself are all nicely organized so I can find stuff. And so what I do is I open that up, I look at all your stuff, and then I'll give you a grade. At the very bottom it says points possible and then points received. So let's say you've done everything 100% correct, you'll get 6 out of 6 points, okay? So I'll write on your paper 6. Let's say you had some stuff wrong. Maybe you get 4 points. I'll put a 4 there. I'll go up to here, I'll mark off things that you may have been missing. You know, maybe you didn't organize correctly. So I'll put, you know, layers named, or folders, too much stuff in the folders or whatever. Your lighting isn't looking good, you forgot shadows, whatever it is. I'll mark up here what it is. If you're satisfied with whatever grade I give you, you sign down here, give me the paper back, and then I put that into Canvas, and that's your final grade on that assignment. If you want to fix something up, you check the resubmit, fix it all up. When you resubmit it, you give me the paper back, and then I know to regrade that piece of paper, to regrade that artwork, okay? And then once I regrade it, I give you the paper back, and then you say, cool, you sign it, you give it back to me, and that goes into Canvas, okay? It might sound complex at first, but you'll get into the groove of it, all right? It's pretty simple, and it makes it really easy for you to see, obviously, what grade you got on something. But then when you submit that back to me, it's a lot easier for me to go through into Canvas and just say 4, 3, 2, 1, whatever, without having to type in all of these notes. And then when you turn something in, then I have to go and check what Canvas said, and then check what that was. It's a lot less work. More paper, but less work, okay? So let's go through and fill this thing out. So our project name is going to be Miniroom. Our due date for this will be September 5th, 2018. Nope, yes, that's a week from today, yep, okay. So September 5th, 2018 will be the due date. This is not a terribly long assignment. We've gone through already the process of modeling some basic stuff, rendering it out, blah, 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 making a movie. We're going to do that again, but just now a different level, okay? These first couple assignments are just techniques, just getting used to the interface, that kind of stuff. So I don't put a whole lot of weight or time involved in them, okay? We could spend, like I've said before, like an entire semester building props for this room and really making it look photorealistic if we wanted. For the description of this, we want to understand the basics of Cinema 4D by creating a room using low-res props. For our learning objectives, we'll be making simple 3D objects. In your scene right now, you should have a bookcase, a chair, and a desk, and then you'll have 3 additional items. Okay, those 3 extra items are things that you are just going to make. I'm going to go over some examples today after this, so you can get an idea of other things you may be able to build, how you would attack those building issues. Okay. Basic 3D materials. So we'll be creating some with textures, meaning that there's some sort of something else besides flat coloring, and then some with just color on them. Okay, so the texture might be like a wood pattern, or a noise pattern, or a brick pattern, or a picture, or whatever. Basic 3D lighting with appropriate shadows. A smooth rendered camera animation, an organized folder structure, scene, and layers. I can't emphasize enough how important it is to stay organized. It's very easy, especially in 3D, to lose track of where your files are, lose track of how your stuff is organized and where things are going and how you're getting them in. It's very overwhelming when you get to that point where everything is just a huge mess of files and you're trying to reorganize stuff and recover it. So for this one, there's no planning involved. We did some sketches on this, but for this one, I don't want any things turned in. Our next assignment, which I'll also talk about today, because you'll need to start working on the sketches for that, those ones you will turn in. For project folder, you will turn in everything. And by everything, like I said, it means just your movie, your last file, and any images that will go into it. Okay, I don't need to see all your images and all your different files that you have. Okay, you'll be doing a movie, so we'll have a single camera, single sweep across the room. And again, I'm going to hit on a lot of these today. We're not going to be here Monday because of the holiday, so I want to have them. That way, if you have the software at home, you can kind of play with it over the weekend and get stuff kind of tidied up. You don't want to wait until 10 minutes before it's due to start rendering your stuff. You want to have some time to actually get it done, okay? And then the class number is 2510, Intro to 3D, and then the points possible is 6. Make sure you put your name on these, okay? Where it says your name, that's where you put your name. I got about 5 of them last semester that nobody ever claimed. Maybe they just filled them out again, I don't know. If you do lose your sheet, you can jump back to the video on YouTube, and then you could find this section and rewrite all the stuff out, okay? Any questions on that sheet? No? All right, so now what I want to do is go over just some ways that, number one, I would attack different modeling projects, different modeling assignments. It'll give you a better sense of how to approach some of the stuff that you may want to put in your room. So looking around Monday when you guys were modeling stuff, I'm going to use that as kind of like the gauge, right? So one of the things that someone made was a bed. So try not to model the entire bed out of one piece. You definitely could, but try not to, okay? Think of it as the actual pieces. You got the headboard, you got the foot of the bed, the footboard, you got rails. If you're doing the rails, you have a, what's the bottom one called? No, the mattress and box spring. You have box spring, mattress, sheets, pillow, whatever, okay? So you think of all those things as separate pieces. So if I'm doing a headboard for this, it's basically just like the same process we did on our desk. So I'm just kind of going through and, oops. Let's say that's the headboard there. I want to make it a bit fancier, so I'll just kind of pull these, oops, in. There we go. So I'm going to hit a little bit less. There we go. So I'm going to hit C on this, and then I'm just going to grab, let's say, these faces on the outside, and then just extrude. Okay, now what that gives me is it gives me these little spots on top that I could then extrude upward. And so now, super simple, there's a frame for a bed, or the headboard for a bed. If I want to go more complex, I can use that knife tool, that loop tool, and just add some divisions. Let's say that. And then go into my selections. And now it's a bit more complex, okay? So very simple shape, just a couple extrusions, a couple divisions, and then kind of forming it, we get something like that. So I'm just gonna push that back. Notice when I move stuff that I always grab the arrows. You'll never see me just kind of click in the middle and move something around like that. It's a bad thing to do. Even when you're on the arrow, sometimes it looks like you're on the arrow, but you're not. And it still moves it like in that crazy wonky way, right? If I'm making the foot of the bed, I'm just going to duplicate that. So I just control drag it, and then I can shrink it down. I can't shrink it down. I'm going to switch to the points, grab all those points, and then just push it down. And then maybe grab these points, and then push that up some. So now that kind of looks like that's a matching set of footboard and headboard. I'm doing a mattress. That. There we go. I could leave it like that. I should have a little bit of rounding to it, right? That's what mattresses typically have. The way that we would round stuff, I could add a bevel all the way around it. And we didn't get into bevels yet, but that's how I could do it. The other thing that I could do is just go to, because this is a cube, go to fillet, and then just change how wide that fillet is. So like that. Seems like an appropriate mattress box spring type shape. There we go. I'll just drag one up, and there's my mattress. Now if I want to put something like sheets on this, we'll see how well my memory is going to work for doing this stuff. I don't do this kind of stuff too much in cinema, but we'll see. We'll see how good this is going to work. So I'm going to put a blanket on top of the bed. All right, that's good. Under simulate cloth, I'm going to say this is a cloth surface. Okay, so now that's a cloth surface. If I hit play, nothing happens because I didn't drop it in there. There you go. Now I hit play and nothing still. Oh, I didn't hit C. That's why it didn't work. So cloth surface, drop it in, rewind, hit play. Why aren't you falling? Oh, I went to the wrong cloth. This is something different. I forgot. That's something different. I have to go to tags, simulation, cloth here. And now when I rewind this and hit play, it falls down. Cool. Very much like our other one, right? When we did those pieces that just fell. The cloth one, though, is different because it's going to be soft. I just have to tell it to collide with the mattress. So I go to tags, simulation, cloth collider. On that cube, hit play. And now it kind of folds around it. Okay. Then I can click on the cloth. I can go to stiffness. Right now, if you look, it's like, that's like really a lot of starch in that. So let's set this to like 20. And then play. It's a little bit better. 1. Let's take the friction or the bounce off. There we go. Much better. Okay. So what I do is when I'm happy with that, I just click on that plane, and then I right click, and then I say current state to object. And what it does is it just takes that object and just like locks it into, that's the shape of it. And then I can just delete all of these extra tags on here that don't need to be there. And what this does, it gives me a starting point that I could then just turn my points on and marquee these and then just tuck it in. Too far. That. Maybe scale it this way, maybe scale it that way, maybe then move it in slightly. There we go. Same thing, oops. Same thing there. I'm just going to marquee. I'm going to flatten this out, move it in. Cool. So that's good enough. For the pillows, I could basically just take a cube. Come on. All right, so that looks like a good spot. Oops. I'll do another fillet on here. I'll take my fillet radiuses like that, but I'll put less divisions. So this only has 2 divisions. And then under this thing, we didn't show this yet, but this is a subdivision surface. What it's going to do is smooth the entire thing out, okay? So if I hold down Alt and click on that, it'll smooth it out and add more divisions to it and keep this kind of, you know, softer looking. If I turn off my stuff here, yes, sir. Frozen? All right, we'll take care of that in a second. So there's my pillow, and then you could adjust it further if you wanted to, like if I wanted this lip around here adjusted or, you know, whatever, you can play with the points there. Anytime you add a flag or a dynamics or anything like this where it's nested inside something else, in order for you to be able to edit it at that point, you have to hit the C key or do the right click and say current state as object. And then what that does, it creates a separate object that is just that item with all the points on it. Okay? So don't expect your stuff to look photorealistic at this point. All we're doing here is just trying to get just a good sense of how to navigate in the system and just mentally get ourselves ready for what we're doing. Even this, you can see it's kind of blocky looking. If I Alt click on the smooth there, it'll smooth that out a whole lot. Then I can take this whole thing, let's see, this, yeah, all of these things, and then do Alt G, and then that's grouping. So there's my bed. And then I can slide this where I want that to be. Oops.
That's one object out of the way.
Yep, that's, well, it's not one object now. It's one grouping of objects, so that would count as several objects for your thing, right? So the pillows, if I'm grading this, right, I would count the pillows as an object, the bed as an object, you know. So this would be counted as several objects here.
So we can make a really complex object. That'll be it.
Yeah, as long as it has enough parts in there, right? Even the bed here, just to kind of fill up the room, you know, this is kind of like a weird Brady Bunch where it's like couples living together. It's like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, but they have separate beds for all the grandparents. There we go. Cool. All right. So that's how you can kind of approach how you model stuff. Everything is going to be different. Just kind of get in there and get some basic shapes. The same way I did the cushions or the mattress, the same way I did the pillows, you could also do like couch cushions. Okay? Even if you're doing like a couch itself, don't try to model the whole couch as one piece. See if you can model it as separate pieces. So I'm going to hit C on this. This is already hugely scaled, but that's fine. I'm just going to extrude this up. I'm going to grab these three sides here, extrude those out. Maybe I'll do a knife loop about here. And then extrude that up. And then if I smooth this, you'll see how we get kind of like the arm of a chair or a couch, right? It's not fancy, it's not perfect, but it's good enough. And I can scale that down so that it looks better proportioned.
How do you universal scale something down?
As long as you don't click and drag on one of these, so like the move tool, I always click on the arrows, scale, I just want to grab anywhere and click and drag and it'll do it, okay? And it'll do it universally. All right, so there's that, and then I would just basically create a cube, and that would be like the connection between the couch arms of it, right? You could bridge them. That's just getting a little bit more involved because they're two separate shapes. I have to combine them into one shape, and then I could bridge. Also, looking at how many divisions we have in each one of these, it would be a lot. So I would want to go back to, let me pull it out of that. I want to go back to this shape, and then I could bridge. Okay. Now, just for fun, let's just do that so you can see it. There's a connect here, so I make sure I have both selected. I go to connect. I didn't need them both selected. I just need to drag both into connect. There we go. And then I hit C to like bake the connection. And now I can go to this one and this one, go to bridge, and then bridge those together. And then the same thing here. Now this is where it gets complicated because if I do a bridge here, even though it looks like this is nice and smooth from one to the other, when I put this inside a subdivision, you'll see this kind of like weird shape or puckering happening here. There's basically a face from the bottom, there's a face on the top, and they're touching each other. So when we do stuff like that, we actually have to go inside, and then we have to delete those extra faces. And then if we drop it in, it'll still give us something weird probably. Oops, back to modeling mode. There we go. Nope, that's actually fine there. Yep, here it looks kind of weird, but the rest is fine. Okay, then I would also bridge across the other areas, okay? Don't worry too much about that now, but that's eventually, you'll get to that point. Okay, so just think about how you can modularly do that. All right, so I'm going to show on the chair here, and it works the same way on the desk, the bookcase, any object you have that is hard-edged, this will work for, okay? So eventually we're going to be rendering this stuff out. So when we render, oops, this is what the chair is going to look like. One of the dead giveaways in 3D for stuff looking cheesy is that everything has a hard edge to it, okay? We want to model it with hard edges because it's easier to do that, but at some point we want to give it some softness. We want to basically like bevel each edge or soften each edge, okay? So it still looks smooth and straight, but then there's also this like softness that happens around it. So I'm going to grab the chair here, and I need to select every edge that's at a 90-degree-ish angle, okay? So if you look at these edges, these are all the ones that have a sharp corner by them. So it's not like this one. None of these would count because there's no corner right there. It's these ones here where we're going from one face to another face and there is that sharp edge, okay? So if I go around this entire thing and I do that, this is going to take forever, okay? So that's like, I don't want to do that. So I'm going to use a different tool. I'm going to grab the entire chair. Actually, I don't need to grab the chair. I'm going to go to Select, and I'm going to go to Fong Break Selection. And what this will do is I can basically set the angle of two faces connecting, and any angle that I choose, it'll grab all the edges that are associated with that, okay? So if I just say Select All, see how it grabbed all the edges on that chair. Now it grabbed these ones, I don't want those ones. So I'm going to override this and then try to find a good number. So probably 100, under 90. There we go. Maybe a little bit above 85. And it may just grab those and I may just be fine with that. Yeah. It's going to grab those, I guess I'll be fine with it grabbing those. If I don't want them, I can always switch back to my Move tool and just deselect it. And this will, again, it'll just be like less time still than me trying to do it the other way, which is going through and grabbing all of those edges. There we go. So that should be all of them. Okay, so select Fong Break Selection. You'll use that one a lot when you get into high-res modeling stuff. Then I'm going to use Bevel, so I can right-click and see where Bevel is. The hotkey is MS. And it works just like the extrude does, where you wouldn't click on the faces, you would click and drag right on that edge. And you'll see how it softens that edge just slightly. Over in the options here, I can add subdivisions. So that will make that look nice and smooth. So now if I render this, you can see the huge difference between the two chairs. This one looks or can look a lot more realistic than this one can. I can put a million textures on this, it's never going to look as good as that one will, okay, because this one has nice soft edges around it. I probably want to take that offset down slightly, though. That's still maybe too much. It's too little. Yep, that's good there, nice and crisp, okay. Now, look at this like crotchety area right here where it just like comes to like a point. If I take my bevel that I just did, my beveled chair, I hold down Alt and I click on that smooth, it'll smooth on top of the bevel and it'll get rid of that kind of thing. But then I get these areas here that look kind of weird. So sometimes in modeling, especially when you're newer, you have to kind of balance like what level do I want to do? Like am I fine with it looking like this as long as the back looks smooth? Or do I really want that bottom to look smooth, but then the back looks weird and I have to go through and kind of fix that, okay? So for your turn-in, I'm not going to be too concerned about which one you went with for that. I'm more concerned that you can kind of disseminate between the two. If I wanted this and I still wanted this to be smooth, I could always add more divisions and then just manually just shape it like that, okay? All right, so that's that stuff. It would work on my desk too, and you'll see like a huge difference in everything you do if you add that in there. So Fong Break, select all. I'm just going to go with the default here because, nope, the default didn't work because it didn't grab this. It's 40, there we go. I had to go really far. There we go. And so now that looks pretty good. Cool. You'll notice that if your bevel doesn't work, you've done something wrong with your model, and for now you can just skip it if you don't want to put the bevel on that surface or whatever. Here's where it would go wrong. So if I were to grab these edges here and I beveled it, it works. Okay, the surface is clean, everything's fine. If I start grabbing faces like this and I extrude them, and let's say I extrude these, Okay, I barely extruded that. And then let's say I add a bunch of divisions like this. This surface may not bevel, we'll see. So I'm going to Fong break. Oops. Oh, I'm not in edges, that's why it didn't work. Fong break, select all. Yep, or you get something like that that happens. Okay, so basically something on my surface is just like really crazy and it's just not working. If that's the case, I undo it. I get my phone. And then I just, move on. If this is something that I want to happen, like I need the bevels here, I need to go through this surface and clean it up. That might mean merging points together, deleting edges, whatever it takes, okay? All right, so that's modeling, that's adding some bevels. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create a camera in here, and we can start animating a camera. So under this little camera app, there's one camera that we're going to use, which is just this regular camera one. It's the easiest one to use. Whenever you create a camera inside of Cinema, you get the camera guy up here at the top. I'm going to play with this focal length. I'm going to make this maybe like 60. I think that should be good. As I zoom in and out, this is the camera. Okay, so I'm not actually in the camera like looking through it. That's the camera. If I want to look through it, I click this, and now I'm looking through the camera. And as I spin around, that's me moving the camera. Okay? So when you do this, you have to deselect the camera sometimes when you zoom in and out. When we have our room kind of staged and we have items around it, one of the things we want to do is animate a camera just sweeping across. So I'm going to set up my camera where I want this to start. Let's say there. I'm going to click my camera, click coordinates, and then just make sure I'm at 0. Click and drag this, click and drag that. Okay, so that's how you set keyframes inside Cinema. You just click and drag right on those dots. Anywhere you see those dots, that's what stuff you can animate. So my first keyframe is at 0. That's where my camera is going to start off. How long is our animation? 5 seconds at what? Okay, so what's my last frame? 30 frames in a second, and we have 5 seconds. Was it? 150, yep. So we're going to go down here, and we'll set that to 150. And then we drag this up. So this is our end time. This is our start time. This bar in the middle is our work area. So sometimes you may want to just focus in on one spot. This class we really don't have that, but you could. I'm going to go to 150. I'm going to rotate my camera over here and then just reset my keyframes. So now I get this. Okay, that's all you have to and should do for this assignment. We only have 5 seconds, so you can't like zoom in, zoom out, spin the camera around, do all this fancy stuff you might have seen in movies. It's not going to work. You want a nice, smooth animation, just like that. Okay. I'm also going to click on my keyframes. So anytime you set a keyframe in Cinema, you'll see them down here in the timeline. So there's one there and there's one at 150. So I'm just going to shift click both. And I'm going to set their interpolation to linear. And what that does is instead of the camera like picking up speed and then slowing down, like slow at the beginning, fast in the middle, slow at the end, it's just going to go at a constant speed the entire time. Every time we do a camera sweep, we want that to be there, okay? So don't complicate your camera. That's as simple as it has to be. We made a camera, we set the starting point, set a key. Set the ending point, set a key. It's done, okay? Minus the linear thing, okay? So then my last stage of this, I'm going to jump out, or my last 2 stages of this, one of them is going to be lighting. We talked about that before. We could either do our lighting first, we could do our lighting second, or we can do materials first and materials second. Either way we do those, it's just kind of up to you. So I'll do lighting first. lighting on simple objects without any materials will happen much quicker than if I had all the textures and materials in the room first, then I start doing lighting, okay? So I'm going to add a regular light here, just so you can see the different kinds. This is a point light, like a light bulb. It starts in the center and goes outward, okay? If I hit Shift R to see what it looks like, that's what it looks like. There's no shadows in the room. You can see on the floor. So I'm going to go to my shadows and I'll turn on soft shadows. Okay, so now I have some shadows in there. If they're too dark, I'm going to just knock their density down to, let's say, 20%. Let's say 35%. That's good, okay. All right, so that's good. So that's a point light, okay. This one is a spotlight. Spotlight and target light are basically the same thing. If you use, if you were to animate like a spotlight moving around like this, you'd want to use a target light. If you just have a spotlight because you have one of these torch lamps and you want to light upwards, that's what you would use that for, okay? Or you just have a stationary light. So I'm going to go with spotlight here so you can see it. Well, it's kind of creepy. I'm going to take the shadow back to soft. Okay, so now we don't see anything when I turn shadow on because my light is actually in the ground. Once I raise it above the ground, then I render. I think I'm inside something else now. I'm inside the couch cushion. There we go. There we go. Now we can see it. Okay, so the way this one works is that it has an origin and a direction. So as I rotate this around, it'll control like what we're looking at. I could also click the light, go to my general, or my details, and control the angle. Right, so there's the angle that the light's going to be kind of shining outward. If I had these lamps in here, I could take one of these spotlights, put it like inside the lamp, and have it shine upwards at the ceiling. And that would give the illusion that light's coming off of there. If I had a projector, I could have a spotlight projecting from there, and it would look like it's projecting, okay? Some of these lights, you'll use multiple ones. So if I want a light with spotlights, I may duplicate the light and kind of rotate it around. And now I have basically light lighting up my entire scene. Now the advantage of doing something like this versus doing a point light is that the point light is universal the entire time, right? A spotlight, it has a softness to the edges. And so basically by shooting 4 of these, we get some softness and some variation in the scene, okay? I don't want to use that either. I'm just going to delete those for now. And then the last light we're going to show is the area light. This one is good, and this is typically how you want to light up your room. Is I'm going to make an area light like this. Okay, so this is like a big panel light, like something you would see in like photography or whatever. Okay, so that lights up everything there. I'm going to go to my shadows. I'm going to set these to area light shadows. That's one of the advantages of area lights is you get those shadows. And you'll see that these shadows are going to look a lot more realistic. Instead of our light coming from a single dot, which causes very hard shadows, the area light is from a panel. So the light is actually being emitted from a whole region. And what we get are these nice soft shadows that kind of spread out some, okay? Like a window would, yep. Or even these, right? So like these fluorescent lights, if I'm doing those, I could use an area light that's just like longer, and that would still give me that same illusion. Okay? So these shadows will look a lot nicer. Now keep in mind that my area light is right here, shining through this area. If I were to jump to where my chair is, and I spun around to the other side of this, you'll see that this side is complete dark. I'm not over there, so it doesn't really matter, okay? Like my camera is not showing that side of this scene. My camera is on the other side of the scene, right here. So as long as this side looks good, that's all I care about, okay?
But if we did like that side, it would give an effect of more realism, wouldn't it?
Correct. If we did and we saw it, right. Or if we had something like reflections, or we had a piece of glass and we would see through it, we would pick up on some of those things. Now let's say that I wanted to light up that side too. So I could take this area light, duplicate it over here, and just turn shadows off. And then I have to rotate this around. Oops, wrong button. There we go. And now what this is going to do is, in 3D, when you have a light and it doesn't have shadows, it goes through stuff, okay? So because we've gone through this object, basically it's going to light up both sides of the room. This side should look pretty consistent. We don't notice anything huge happening here. But when we come to this side, and I look behind that chair again, if I can find the chair. There you are. Now we can see the back of that chair. Okay, so I've just used two lights. There's one on this side, one on that side. If I'm trying to emulate a light in the room, I would also add a spotlight inside there, maybe a point light or a regular light inside there. I could even take one of these area lights here. Whoops. I'm going to rotate it. So a little bit more sizing on this, but good enough for now. Make it area light shadows. I'm going to give it a color. And it's subtle, and you probably won't pick it up on the, no, we're not pick up the projector at all. Let's close that. I'm going to take the intensity up. There we go. So now that screen is like illuminating that side of the room. It doesn't look realistic because there's nothing on the screen right now, but if I had a picture of something blue on the screen and you saw that, it would feel like that blue is like illuminating the rest of the room, okay? So you can stack lights on top of each other, just make sure you're kind of balancing out which ones are in charge, okay? All right, so lights, keep them simple. We'll go over more of these in more detail later, but I'm just giving you the nuts and bolts right now. All right, so now for materials. Last time we went through, we kind of showed some materials. We double click down here. We give our material a name, so this will be plain wood. We can give it a flat color. Okay, I can drag this onto the chair. And that will give it a plain color, okay? This is not a texture, this is a straight up color. If you want textures, you can go to textures.com. That's the website I talked about before. You'll log in or make an account, it's free. And then you can find pictures. So I will find a picture of wood that I want to use. I guess I'll go with that one for now. Good enough for it. I don't have premium, so I have to stick with whatever I can get. This one here is seamless, so if you look at the bottom of this, you can see that thing right there. If I were to put that material in my scene and I like repeated it, I would see that line happening all over the place. Typically you want a seamless one, so I will grab a seamless one. And I'm going to, oops. Copy that and paste it into my P drive, into 2510, Miniroom, and put that inside textures. Okay, so I dropped that wood picture inside of my textures folder. And then now I should be able to access it. Okay, so if I go here and I go to my texture and I click on this button here, it'll jump me right into that folder because it knows this is where your scene is, that's probably where your textures are. If it doesn't, I just navigate to it. When I open this, I may get this message. Most of the time you'll get that message. Basically what it's saying is, Cinema 4D has like basically a location that's looking for all the textures. Do you want to copy this image into that location? The answer is always no, okay? Because what's going to happen is it's going to copy it to the hard drive and try to link to the hard drive. When you come in next time, it's not going to be there, and then it just creates all this stuff. So I'm going to say no. All right, so now I have this. Now when I render, I have a picture of that wood actually on the chair. That looks pretty horrible, right? Yes, it does. Okay. When you take a flat image and then you take a 3D item, it doesn't know how to put it on there. Okay. So we have to kind of give it some indicator, like here's how I want you to put it on. I'm going to open up this where my chair is, and you can see there's the material. If I click on that, I can choose how it's projecting. So right now it's doing a UV mapping. Basically, inside the software, it's already taken this shape and flattened it out. It doesn't do a good job, and that's why it looks like that. Okay? So we're going to tell it to do cubic. And what cubic does is it says project one texture this way, one texture this way, and one texture that way. So whichever way the faces are mostly facing, it'll automatically shoot that texture onto it. So now we should get something that looks a bit better. It's not going to look perfect, but it looks a bit better. One thing I'm going to do for sure on this one, my texture is going this way on the chair. I'm going to rotate it so it goes that way. That way would look definitely better than what we're seeing. So I go to that, offset, rotate. I'm verifying there's no spot here. There's not. Okay. So I will go over here. This is your texture. That's the cube and how it's projecting. I just rotate it. Come on, so close. All right, my chair is rotated. Let me rotate my chair back to where it was. There we go. So now this will be easier to grab that and rotate that perfectly up and down. And then I can click on my chair and then rotate it. There we go. So that looks a lot better having the wood going up and down versus side to side. Okay? Sometimes it's just a picture. Finding a different picture would help too. Sir?
So what if we built the chair piece by piece and texture each piece by piece?
You could do that too. Yep.
Will we be able to tell? Or?
You would. Because you would have more seams. The good thing about building stuff as it's built in the real world is it's going to look more realistic. So a chair like this is made of several pieces of wood, and where each piece of wood meets, typically there's a line, right? Where the wood grain doesn't flow like it's flowing here. That doesn't make sense, right? So we should have some indicators that would help. A good example of that is a picture frame. I don't know if you guys stare at picture frames like I do, but they're pretty fascinating. Wood. There we go. So here's a wood picture frame. If I took that same wood texture and I threw it on a picture frame, do you see how the corners here are at an angle, right? And it's obvious that that is on an angle because when they make a picture frame, they take a piece of wood and they cut it on an angle, and then they cut another one on an angle, and then they just meet those two pieces together. So if I were to have modeled just this slat right here, and then texture that to be like wood, texture this one to be like wood, texture that one, and put it all together, it would look more realistic, okay? Now, when you get more advanced and more comfortable with the software, there's something called UV layout, where we could actually take a regular square cube that is all one piece and actually make it look exactly like that, where it looks like it has these creases and areas that don't actually have those creases or have the lines going that way, okay? It's a bit more complex, especially in cinema, we'll get there eventually, okay? So good enough for our chair there. Now every time I take this wood, I can just drop it like on the desk. I can drop it on this other chair. Each time I have to go and find that item. So here is the chair. I change this to cubic, and then I need to go back into that one and rotate it. Oops, that's the wrong way to rotate it apparently. There we go. And then the same thing on the desk. Go to the desk, change it to cubic. And then you could also make it bigger too. So if you want the texture to be bigger or smaller, or if you want to offset it some. Come on. And then if you really get into it, like the way that wood is laid out, the way that wood's cut, the direction of the grain, all that stuff, goes into how realistic stuff looks, right? So on the chair, the wood grain should go up and down like this. On this piece here, the wood grain should go across, which it is. On these back pieces, it's hard to see, they're going up and down. They wouldn't. The wood grain on the back would go like that, because you always go like the longest side is the direction with the wood grain flowing, right? Stuff to pay attention to if you ever, like depending on how detailed you want to get with your stuffs. Cool. All right, so let's add a material to this thing, okay? So I'm going to make a material here. I'm just going to make this a black material. So I'm going to go black like my screen here. You'll notice that there is some softness right there. That's fine. It's a little bit of highlight that'll pick up. I give this a name, monitor. Oops. Black. There we go. I'm going to drop this onto the monitor. And also drop it onto the base, and I'll also drop it onto this one, and also drop it onto that one. All right. Without the bevel, it looks pretty horrible. If I add a bevel to this, those edges will pick up a lot more highlight better. And if I added a smooth to that, that would look a lot better also. Okay. This still doesn't look very good because my screen, I want to have like a blue screen or something on, not a blue screen of death, but a blue screen, so it looks like something's on there. If I make a new material, instead of having color here, I'm going to turn that off and go to luminance. Luminance is like lighting, like it'll light it up. And if I make this a blue color, like my light, I'm actually going to turn the color on also and just pull it down and make it blue. And go back to luminance and make this a darker blue. I want to have some lighting on it, but I don't want it to be like, you know, overboard. Like that seems good. I'm also going to go to my reflection. This is like the default. You see it says legacy. Anything legacy in 3D means old and outdated. I'm going to click on Beckman and take the roughness down and pull the reflection up. There we go. Okay. Oops. I didn't name that, so I want to name it. Screen. Okay. So I switch to face mode, and if I grab on just the face for that, I'm going to scoot it forward a little bit because it seems too far back. There we go. And then I'm going to drag this screen onto that. So now what we get is we get an actual like solid color on that face. And you'll see that there's some reflection in there, so it kind of sort of looks like a screen. Yes, sir? Yep, that was the next thing, right? So I could go in here to images for Windows backgrounds, that one there. I'll save the image to my P drive. Now this is not my image. I would not use this outside of this lecture. So I wouldn't try to make money off this because it's not my image, right? Any images you get, you should make sure you have the rights to use them. Okay, so there we go. So now instead of this screen being that, I'm going to go to the texture and grab that Windows one. What do I hit here? No. Yep. All right, so that looks disgusting. It, again, it doesn't know how to lay out that image, so I go and find the texture here. I could try cubic, but I think in this case it actually would probably be better if it was just flat. I guess it's getting me the same exact results, so we'll just do cubic. I'll click on this. I will shrink it down. And I will rotate it. Yeah, that's what I thought. And then I will adjust its position. That's good enough. Okay. Right. And so now we get the illusion that this monitor is actually like lighting up the area, right? Because you can see the blue right here, so it's got to be coming from that. It's not though. Now, if you like, that was a lot of work to set up just that one monitor. I don't want to have to do that for the other one. So if I just delete the other one, group these together, and then I duplicate it, you'll see how that texture just comes over with it exactly. Okay, I'm going to delete that again, because the other part of this monitor that makes it work is that light. Whoops. So I'm going to grab light 2, I believe it is, yes, and drop light 2 into that monitor group. And so now when I take this and duplicate it, the room just got a little bit brighter. And then I duplicate that again. Holy cow, we're getting brighter even. Right. It looks like I said, like they're lighting it up. Okay. We could even take, if we're trying to create, you know, a scene, we're trying to create an emotion or a feeling with this room. I'm going to take the intensity down on my lights really low. It's like 0.25, 0.25. So those are the big lights on the outside. Right. So now what it's going to do is it's going to feel like it's dark, it's at night, and these monitors are just lighting the room up. That's way too dark. I need to kick up the other lights some. Light here, maybe 0.5. Nope, still not enough. Let me verify I'm using the right light here. Yeah, that's that one. Oh, this is 0.75%, sorry. 50%. That makes more sense. And the same thing here, 50%. There we go. So now it really feels like it's more of a night scene, and then we have these screens that are up, and that's what's lighting up the rest of the room, okay? So there's a whole lot of stuff we can control in 3D. It's simply a matter of knowing what to control, how to do it, and then, you know, obviously what it should look like in the end is important as well. All right, so that's where I'm going to leave it for today. So you should be able to, based on the 2 videos we have for this, you should be able to model some basic stuff, apply some basic materials, and then create your rendered camera, your animated camera, and then create some lights in the scene, okay? Next class, Wednesday, so a week from today, I'll go over the rendering process for it. It's the same process we did in the last one. So if you do get ahead and you want to actually jump ahead and render it out, or at least see what it's going to look like, just jump back to that first video that we did where it was the items falling on the ground, okay? Other than that, the rest of the day is just going to be continue working on our stuff. Yes, ma'am.